On March 18, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 vanished from radar just under an hour into its flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. The aircraft was a Boeing 777, a highly reliable, long-range jet with a spotless safety record. On board were 239 people. The weather was clear, the crew was experienced, and yet MH370 simply just disappeared. Theories started to flood in about the mysterious disappearance, but to this day, no one knows what made a 300-ton plane vanish. Today, lady and man, we are taking a deep dive into the disappearance of Flight MH370, the mysterious theories surrounding it, and even some new bizarre evidence has recently come out. Flight MH370 took off at 12:41 AM local time on March 8, 2014. It climbed normally to a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet and headed northeast over the South China Sea. Everything so far was a routine flight. There was absolutely no warning signs that something strange was about to happen until 1:19 AM, when the co-pilot Farik Abdul Hamid radioed Malaysian air traffic control with the now famous final words, "Good night, Malaysian 370. And then 2 minutes later, at 1:21 AM, the aircraft's transponder was turned off, which obviously should never happen, ever. This device allows air traffic control to track a plane's position and altitude. Without it, MH370 disappeared from civilian radar. However, Malaysian military radar continued to follow it, and for a while it looked okay, until out of nowhere, the plane suddenly shifted direction and it went completely off their planned course. Instead of continuing towards China, the plane made a sharp left turn, flew back across the Malay Peninsula and turned northwest towards the Andaman Sea. At 2:22 AM it vanished from... Sorry, one sec. What are you doing?
I'm asking for subscribers.
Okay, continue, I guess. Sorry about that, guys. Ignore him. At 2:22 AM, it vanished from military radar too. At that point, the aircraft was flying west of the Malaysian coastline, nowhere near its original flight path. And just like that, the plane was never seen or even heard from ever again. It literally vanished. Initially, search and rescue efforts focused on the South China Sea. This is where the plane was last seen by civilian radar, but as more of the data came in, that search area was quickly deemed inaccurate. The breakthrough came from a pretty unlikely source, Inmarsat, a British satellite company. MH370's satellite data unit, though not actively transmitting flight information, had actually been pinging an Inmarsat satellite. They call these handshakes, which are automated signals sent every hour. And these proved that MH370 had stayed airborne for approximately 7 more hours until around 8:19 AM. This was a huge breakthrough because it sort of deemed the theory of pilot suicide kind of unlikely. Why would he fly for 7 more hours and not just take the plane down on the original path? We'll get into that shortly. By measuring the shift of these pings, Inmarsat determined that the aircraft followed a curved flight path into the southern Indian Ocean. The final handshake suggested that the plane was almost out of fuel and descending rapidly. So over 3 years, search teams mapped 120,000 square kilometers of the ocean floor. To put that in comparison, the entire country of Iceland is only 103,000 kilometers squared. They searched a fucking huge area and yet not a single piece of wreckage was found. However, the next year in 2015, mysterious plane wreckage started to wash up on shore and actually matched MH370. So over the next few years, over 30 confirmed and suspected parts of the aircraft were recovered along the Western Indian Ocean. But despite this, the main wreckage and the flight data recorders still remains missing. And the lack of answers made things kind of weird. And obviously it didn't take long for theories and conspiracies to start to fill the headlines about Flight MH370. The most common and sort of the most obvious theory is the idea of pilot involvement. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, the 53-year-old pilot, was experienced with over 18,000 flying hours. But what's quite strange is that investigators actually found that Zaharie had used the home flight simulator to rehearse a route similar to MH370's final arc into the southern Indian Ocean. I'm not sure why this isn't spoken about more. Seems like a pretty damning piece of evidence. I think it's weird. It just seems like a very odd coincidence that he was practicing a very unorthodox flight path, which just so happened to be the one that flight MH370 took before it disappeared. But for now, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, because there's also the theory that MH370 was hijacked. The early deviation from its route, the deliberate disabling of the communication systems, and the smooth execution of complex flight maneuvers all suggest that someone was definitely in control. But if it was a hijacking, why was there no ransom? Or like a political statement, or any form of public communication? No terrorist group ever claimed responsibility, and nothing on the passenger manifest stood out as suspicious. So it's sort of hard to claim it as a hijacking. I guess it could have been a hijacking not linked to terrorism in a form of like mass murder-suicide, but again, the plane changing course and flying for an extra 7 hours seems to rule that one out, right? There is a theory that really intrigues me, and that's the hypoxia theory. People suggest that a slow cabin depressurization might have knocked out everyone on board, and the plane, set on autopilot, could have continued flying until it ran out of fuel. And this actually has happened before, which did result in a Boeing 737 crashing and killing everyone on board. But this scenario still doesn't explain why someone would have turned off the transponder and changed course in the first place. Obviously, it didn't take long at all for the weirder theories to gain traction online. Some people thought it might have been a black hole. I don't believe that one. Some speculated that the plane was actually shot down. People think it actually could have been the US military that might have brought it down near Diego Garcia. The US government has repeatedly denied this. Obviously, they would never admit to something like that. But there really is actually no radar or satellite evidence to back up this theory anyway. So you're back in the clear now, America. But I still have questions. And there's some pretty strange occurrences that really kind of ring some alarm bells. A month earlier, there was a bizarre 45-minute phone call from the pilot of MH370 to his cousin, who happened to be an aircraft engineer. More specifically, his cousin actually did work on the Boeing 777s. But what's even weirder is that the pilot actually made a phone call midway through the flight. I'm not talking about a radio call. I mean, he literally used his personal cell phone to attempt a call. Also, as the disappearances started to go public, family members tried calling the phones of loved ones, and for a while there, they'd actually ring, which is quite strange if the phone is destroyed and at the bottom of the ocean. There's a lot of theories, but as of today, the full story of MH370 remains unsolved. But with the new search efforts starting, I have no doubt in my mind that we will get proper answers soon. That's if it's not a massive cover-up for something far more sinister. You never know. You don't know. What do you guys think? Do you have any wild theories that I haven't gone over? Leave them in the comments. Like, share, comment, subscribe.